I cannot wait to talk about this movie. Genuinely, I remember when I started my channel, I was like, I want to talk about this movie. And today is the day I finally get to speak about this movie, and I cannot wait.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
Hello, my name is Paul and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. If you know anything about me, you know me... Wait, that's wrong. If you know anything about me, you know that I love horror movies, specifically POV horror movies. I'm not going to talk about it. I've mentioned it so many times in my videos that you're probably tired of me talking about it. But it is Halloween, so I'm going to be making another video where I speak about one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And what is this movie? Well, I'm not going to tell you just yet because, you know, suspense. I got to keep you on the edge of your seat. But this movie is one of the best. Probably a bit of a controversial thing to say. But anyway, you know me. I love my horror movies. I love my POV movies. I've watched a lot of them, especially in October. I try watch as many horror movies as I can, but growing up, horror movies were so important to me. They were everything that I watched with my friends. Every single weekend I would go to my friend's house, we would pick a horror movie, and that was the case with this movie. We randomly stumbled across it on Netflix and we're like, okay, this kind of looks shit, but it doesn't matter, we can just watch it, talk. But that's not what happened. 80 minutes after starting this movie, we were all quite terrified. We all went to bed at like 3 a.m. and I could not sleep because I kept thinking about this movie. That's how terrifying it was for me when I was like 17. Does it hold up? Yeah, it does. This movie is absolutely incredible. And what is this movie? It's a movie that you've probably heard about, but I feel like there's still not enough people speaking about it because it's just incredible. And this movie is called Creep. Have you heard of it? Then let's talk about it. If you have not heard of it, then let's talk about it. I want you to watch this movie. This movie is less than 90 minutes long and you need to watch it. You have no excuse not to watch it. It's like 75 minutes long. You have no excuse. But what is this movie about? Well, it's about a guy who's a creep. Well, there's actually only two actors in this entire movie, and that's Joseph and Aaron. And I'll give you a really brief synopsis of what this movie is about, but the less you know about this movie, the better. But anyway, Joseph apparently has cancer and he wants to create a video diary of his day-to-day life for his future son that has not been born yet. He's doing this because he's scared he's going to die and he's not going to get to spend time with his son. And that's where the next character in this movie comes in, and that is Aaron. Aaron is a videographer who was hired by Joseph to record him for 8 hours throughout the day for $1,000. Big red flag, but just a massive red flag. $1,000 for 8 hours of filming. Okay. Anyway, Joseph hires Aaron and he's like, hey, can you just film me for the day? And I'm just gonna do things and talk to the camera as if my camera is my son. And all you gotta do is just follow me. I'm gonna take baths and do like very creepy shit. But you know, big red flag, big red flag. And Aaron is like, yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely no problem. And Aaron is so chill about it. He's like, well, maybe this guy who just hired me is just like some lonely, horny person that just wants to spend some time with me. And we also need to acknowledge that the director of this movie is Aaron. Aaron is played by the director of this movie, and this movie is super low budget. And anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what happens in this movie? I don't want to tell you too much because again, the less you know, the better. But we follow Joseph and Aaron, primarily Joseph, and we learn a lot of very weird things about him, such as I feel like I should mention here that there's some minor spoilers, but we kind of know where this movie is going. Once you start watching, you know how it's going to end. So throughout this movie, we follow Aaron and he is just showing his future son. Apparently, I'm doing a lot of apparentlys because there's a lot of lies. And the more times you watch this movie, the more lies you're able to identify. And I absolutely love it. Again, minor spoilers. It's kind of just a documentary of Joseph's life. And I know on the surface that sounds boring, but it is not boring because with such a boring description, the director is able to create such an incredible and engaging movie that is terrifying, that utilizes just the most basic POV form to people, and you are terrified watching this movie. Shout out to Mark Duplass. I think that's how you say his name. He is the person that plays Aaron, and he is an incredible actor. This guy is fucking terrifying, from his body movements to the way he moves his eyes to the way he speaks to everything about this movie. This guy can act and he is terrifying. There's only a handful of jump scares in this movie, and you know my thoughts on jump scares. I do not like jump scares because they usually feel cheap, but in this movie they feel earned, they make sense. And also, if you need more convincing to watch this movie, well, this entire video is going to be basically me convincing you to watch this movie, is that this movie utilizes the POV form perfectly because Joseph is speaking to the camera as if it is his son and Aaron is just filming it, and he uses the form so well. You feel like Joseph is speaking to you, and that is terrifying because the character of Joseph feels so realistic. The way he speaks about his future son, again, a lot of this, and the way he speaks about his wife, and the fact that he has cancer, and the fact that he's married, and the fact of many, many things that he talks about, they're not true. Don't want to spoil it, but they're not true. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. This movie is low budget, it's minimal, and with that, it makes it feel extremely realistic. There's so many scenes throughout this movie where it just feels realistic. People like this definitely exist. These weird fucking people who are, who definitely need a whole lot of fucking help. And the fact that the story feels realistic, you can empathize with the character of Aaron who's filming everything, and you're like, why do you not leave? But the character of Joseph is so convincing, the way he tells his stories, the way he spews his lies. From Aaron's perspective, you cannot leave, but there's also times where Joseph, like steals his keys or does something that just prevents Aaron from escaping. As you're spending time with Aaron, you're able to empathize with his situation. You're able to put yourself in his shoes and understand that this situation you just cannot escape from. And the more you learn about Joseph, you realize that Joseph's going to be around forever and you can really never get rid of him. And that is fucking terrifying because it feels almost claustrophobic, because everything Aaron tries to do, he cannot escape, he cannot get out. He can't do anything. This movie is about 80 minutes long, and the most incredible thing about this movie is how the information about Joseph, his characteristics, everything about him is slowly revealed. Initially, you're watching this, you're like, okay, this guy's just fucking weird. He just hired this guy. Ha ha ha, he's a weirdo. But slowly, you realize that this guy is way more than just a creep. As the details reveal themselves slowly through dialogue and confessions, you start to become even more terrified for Aaron. It's extremely interesting because this movie is split into two parts. The first part is set in Joseph's house. We're learning about him, we're learning about his son, his wife, his lifestyle, everything in his real house that's definitely not rented. And then the second part is actually filmed in Aaron's house because he is terrified. He's actually, this is a spoiler, just let you know, he's actually escaped Joseph's house, but he's starting to get a lot of mail, and he's starting to get a lot of weird packages and a lot of weird visits from Joseph. And he started to get freaked out. So this movie split into two parts. We're able to utilize the POV so effectively in the 80 minutes because half of it is split on Aaron, half of it is split on Joseph. You learn so much about these characters and you feel so conflicted about these characters, and you just want this to be over. And how this movie ends is so predictable. I don't want to say anything, but you know how this movie ends. And with that, this movie is so engaging. You watch this movie, you want to talk to the movie. This is a movie you need to watch with your friends because you can have a lot of discussion. You can be like, what the fuck is wrong with him? But also you can be like, just run, just escape. There's so much engagement in this movie and it's fucking incredible. And another thing is that this movie didn't have a direct script. It mostly had guidelines. So in a scene, you were just kind of like, oh, make sure this happens in the scene. And the rest was half improvised, which is incredible. How can a movie this good be majority improvised? What the fuck? That's so cool. And initially, whenever you watch this movie, you're like, this is very boring. This doesn't seem interesting. But you have to stick with this movie. You have to be patient with this movie, which is interesting because this is such a short film. But you have to give it your attention. You have to give it your time. You have to sell yourself over to this movie. And if the more you engage with this movie, the more time you give this movie, the more effective and terrifying this movie becomes. I think that's why I absolutely loved it whenever I watched it when I was like 16 or 17, because I knew absolutely nothing. And the second I saw the character of Joseph, I was glued to the screen. I was like so enticed by his character and I wanted to learn more. And if you just give yourself to this movie and you just let it happen, then you will enjoy it and you will love it and you will be fascinated by it. I think that's my recommendation. I think you should watch Creep because it is incredible. Also, there's a second movie which is just as good. It's one of those examples of a second movie being just as strong as the first, but it's even more interesting because you've learned so many things about Joseph in the first movie that it carries over and it builds and it progresses in the second movie. And the character that replaces Aaron is just complete opposite of Aaron. I don't want to talk about the second movie, but if you watch the first one, you need to watch the second one. It is just as creepy, haha, wordplay, and it is just as engaging. But anyway, we're not talking about the second movie, but if you have time, definitely check out the second movie. I am here to tell you to watch Creep. Watch it if you love horror movies. If you don't have time for horror movies, if you're going to watch any movie this Halloween, alone or with your friends, this is the movie to go to. If you want to watch a movie, you watch Creep. It's on Netflix. You have no excuse. It's like 80 minutes long. You need to watch this movie. I hope I've sold it to you because it's one of my favorite POV horror movies of all time. If it isn't my favorite, it's like in the top 3. It's incredible. So I think that's everything I have to say. I know this didn't really make like a lot of coherent sense. I'm kind of like the actors in this movie. I have no script. I have a very vague guidelines on my laptop. But have you watched Creep? What do you think of this movie? I feel like it needs even more love. I know it has a lot of love, but it needs even more love in my opinion. So that's everything I have to say. So thank you so much for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.